Welcome to the next episode of the Geek Out, and today's episode is number 4. So that means we've done 3 other ones so far, and we're on our 4th one. So we haven't lost hope yet. But first, before we do that, we have to introduce everybody here, these awesome and amazing people over here. My name is James. I'm the moderator of this. Over there to the side of me is the wonderful Lauren.
Hello.
And we have Robert down right below me here.
Waffles.
And we have Kiefer diagonal from me.
Hello.
And all of these people rock. And one important thing to bring up is one of them is extra special and more special than all of us. And that's Lauren, because ladies and gentlemen, it is Lauren's birthday. Actually, it was yesterday. Yesterday was Lauren's birthday, but Lauren is 1 year younger, so we want to be able to congratulate Lauren on her awesome 1 year younger birthday. Lauren, happy birthday.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And I hope every single year from this point forward is just as awesome, if not better. But here we are with some more awesome topics here that are, well, geek. And we have 3 specific topics, but the first one is an interesting one that revolves around cartoons, because who doesn't like cartoons? But it is which old or new cartoon or TV shows should be rebooted. So it isn't just a focus on cartoons, but what do you think? What kind of reboots would be exciting for, coming from some of these older shows? So we're going to start with Robert.
Okay. I'm going to keep it strictly to cartoons. This is my personal favorites. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong, just my personal favorites. The first one I want to see reboot done properly is Thundercats as a live action. I thought the 80s genre was great. They did do a reboot of it. To me, I think it sucked. But I think a good reboot of the Thundercats would be nice. The second one, which people say it's a ripoff or a different alternate version of the Thundercats, is the Silverhawks. I love the Silverhawks. I thought it was awesome, great. I would love to see a reboot or live action, or maybe just a reboot of the animated series. That would be amazing. And I want to go really, really old school on this one, which probably a lot of people don't remember. It's Ulysses 31. It's an animated show. It was in France. It's the retelling of Ulysses and his journey, except in space. Had a really great theme song, and I would love to see that being rebooted, either live action or a rebooted anime series. So those are my. I got more, but I want to keep it short. Let's go with Kiefer. Kiefer, you have any cartoons or movies you want to reboot or go down the rabbit hole?
Well, I've thought about that, and most of the cartoons that I have personally watched when I was younger, they've either A, ended off really well and you should just kind of leave it be and not try and bring it back just for the sake of cash grab, or B, they have been rebooted and the reboot was horrible. So I've had a bad taste in my mouth from a lot of reboots. So I think if something ended and it ended on a high note, just leave it. Don't touch it. Because a lot of times they don't get the original people who did it. Most of these times it's just a cash grab. They're trying to get random people who have had nothing to do with it. They don't have any idea what the original idea for the show was, and they just kind of make their own thing, an entirely different show that had nothing to do with it, and then that leaves a bad taste in fans' mouths. So I don't really agree with rebooting old shows that much. What about you, Lauren? What do you think?
I agree completely. If it's gotten to the point in our world where it feels like it's easier to reboot than it is to come up with something original, and it would just there's no reason. You're right, Kiefer. It would just be a cash grab. There's no reason to bring back most of these classic cartoons and shows, and in all honesty, most of these movies. It's just leave them the way that they were and come up with something original. You, James?
I agree mostly. I really do. I feel very passionate about that. There's a lot of things that they should have let go of and just left it the way it was without trying to bring it back. Again, great way of putting it as a cash grab, and there is a total lack of creativity, really. It just within the industry in general, there's just way too much dependency on what did work versus trying to come up with something that's unique that could also work, and it's lazy. It's very lazy, and it's better to try to bring some of those older shows back into the light by just bringing them back, highlight them on Netflix and things like that or something, and then you can just make money again from them, but from the originals by reintroducing those to the newer generation or something, and that works perfectly fine. Now there's certain titles that would really be fun, I think, as a reboot because they never get old, even if you change the storyline. And my favorite is always, I think, going to go back to G.I. Joe, because I grew up watching G.I. Joe. I loved G.I. Joe, and I think that a modern version of G.I. Joe would be fine because no matter what you do, I mean, as long as you don't change characters out, as long as you still stick with the original characters, storyline can be anything because it's just G.I. Joe, but now modern. And they've done that with some of the movies already. And I'd say they turned out just fine. So as long as you don't change characters or out and change details about the characters or anything like that, you stick to the true nature of what those characters were and have always been, and just change the world that they're living in. I think that G.I. Joe would be fun every single time. As long as you don't get artsy fartsy and weird with the graphics, because G.I. Joe isn't meant to be artsy fartsy and weird, odd animation or anything like that. It's supposed to be serious and fun and action and stuff blowing up. So things like that deserve to be brought back and rebooted, because you can reboot them a million times, they'll never get old. But the classics that they were just so unique and so creative, they should be left alone. That was a wonderful question, and I think that is going to be a good debate amongst many people. There's just so much content in the world that could deserve to be rebooted or not. So if you, the viewers, if you have any kind of debate on this one, if you have any personal opinions, feel free to share below. Let us know what kind of shows you'd like to see. Not like we're going to reboot it, but hey, someone might see this and go, hey, he's got a good point. So the second question we have today, this is where the show gets a little bit more technical. We're looking at this happened over the last couple months. It was actually in July, but the N64 leak. There's a big source code leak for N64, both hardware and software. So the question is really a focus on that and how that might affect the industry, video game industry in general, of course, and security, and of course the emulation world. How will this affect emulators and ROMs and all those communities out there? That, not that we're suggesting anything or trying to promote that, but how is this going to have, what kind of an effect is this going to have on them? And for this one, we're going to start with Kiefer.
Me personally, I think it's not actually going to help the people in the emulation scene or anything, because the only reason that they're staying legal is a lot of the times they're like clean room environments where they have no outside input from anything, like any leaks or anything from Nintendo. I feel like this might actually help Nintendo, because if they even get a hint of any of their source code or any software from them being used in any of these emulators, they can just go after them, sue them, and shut them completely down, which would kind of help Nintendo in the long run. So, and if same with the hardware, like if any companies choose to try and replicate the N64 or something, or the hardware or software, then and try and sell a product, well, Nintendo can just go in and sue them and then shut them down as well. So I feel like it's going to be hard for this to actually help the people in the emulation scene or in any of the hardware scene. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah. Shame. Lauren.
I think what Kiefer said is actually quite interesting. You're right. They really need to be they need to watch their backs, because this could end up pulling a bunch of people out of hiding, basically. So it's very gutsy on their part, that's for sure. Do you, James?
I agree with Kiefer on this one in terms of it is going to cause a lot of issues if anybody actually tries to touch any of it. It's kind of more of being or more of nostalgia than anything else, being able to look back on this information. We don't have our hands on it outside of what anybody has seen on Twitter and everything else, but the information contains just a smorgasbord of code and and it covers everything from, there's multiple phases to the leak too, so a lot of the older games were included, and working its way all the way up to the N64. And a lot of the code is broken or missing parts and pieces of it, so that alone is going to prevent people from be able to compile anything from it anyways. And the portions that are available, if they try to include that in anything that they're working on, like you said, I mean, it's going to get them in a lot of trouble. And it's like inserting a watermark for somebody else's work into your work. That's just like a pulsating beacon that's just saying, please, get me in trouble. And it's not going to do them any good. They're not going to use it, because if they do, it's just going to lead right to them. And it's going to put too much focus on and attention on them by Nintendo, and they're going to come after them with their lawyers as hard as they possibly can. And again, though, most of the source code that was leaked is missing large chunks of the information anyway. So a lot of it, again, nostalgia. You're going to see a lot of old artwork and things like that, and the different I forgot the term, pixel images with pixels of the original characters designs of like the NES games and things like that, like from the original Star Fox 2, and then Star Fox and Star Fox N64 and all of that. And it's cool because you can see some of these characters, possibly alternative characters, and things that might have maybe would have made their way into the game. They're kind of maybe tinkering on it or something like that. So you might be able to see some of this information to see what was going through the minds of the development team when they were designing those games. That's kind of cool. But is it going to help the emulation community? No. It might give them some ideas in terms of like, oh, that would be a really good idea. Let's throw Luigi into this. Somebody else had spoken about this on YouTube, and it would be cool to see if a game's missing Luigi, let's make a fan version that has Luigi. It's all about him, But that's about it, So it's really just like looking at a picture book, going, oh, so that's what was going through their heads, and oh, hey, that's a good idea, but that's it. If you touch any of it, you're gonna get zapped. But it was released by 4chan, which is notorious for all this kind of stuff. They love hacking into people and leaking their source code to the world. And I mean, those guys, again, we're not promoting them or anything like that. Some of it's funny, some of it's not. Some of it, it's in the end, it is hurting these companies, because that is, it's their copyright, their patents, it's their intellectual property, and it's theirs. This is what makes them who they are and profitable, and you take that away and steal it and try to replicate it, and that's just causing massive damage to the company. So, but yeah, that is a huge leak, though.
One thing I do want to add, though, is I'm actually kind of surprised that Nintendo actually kept that much source code from all these years ago, because there are companies recently that are just companies that have just immediately, once the project's done, they just delete all the source code, and then it's lost forever, and then people have to try and piece it back together over a period of years. But Nintendo, they just have everything in like a server or something. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, kind of cool. It's risky at the same time. I am a pack rat when it comes to information, digital information. I hold on to everything. So I got things dating back to like the first website I ever designed when I was like 13. I still have some of those files and everything, because why throw them out? But the catch is, if it's something sensitive as intellectual property that's really, really, really important to a company like that, throwing it up and storing it all into a server that has internet access, now that's stupid. Archive it somewhere safe, but make sure it's, it's offline, so that people can't hack into it or anything and steal some of that information. So once I agree with some of these companies where they just get rid of their source code, yeah, I get it. You're protecting it, but at the same time, you might want to hold on to some of that. Like Nintendo Classic and things like that. You might need to look back on some of the source code to make the conversion easier for something new that you come up with later on. That's looking back on some of these older games, or at least the game type. If you want to create new classic games, all of a sudden, it might be useful to have that information in your reservoir, your arsenal, and store it. Save it. I mean, that stuff is it's like family pictures. You don't want to throw those out. Just store them safely. So that way, if all heck breaks loose, they're safe.
I agree.
So the next question we have today is even more complicated, sort of. I mean, it's a little bit more techy, but this one is a focus on PlayStation, and specifically the PlayStation 2 console. And this is the world of modders, or at least relating to them. But this is has specifically to do with the PS2 free DVD boot the new development modding scene easier than ever to mod a PS2, blah 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 blah. I mean, it's the easiest way to mod a PlayStation 2. Not that we're promoting it. We're just saying that this is what's been going on lately, going around. And there's been methods in the past, flip top methods and this and that and blah blah blah, tricking the boot sequence in terms of stuff we won't talk about because we don't want to promote that and teach you how to do it or anything. But this is new, this is popular. Heck, I've noticed you can buy the memory cards that have the free DVD boot already loaded on as Mac something. Kiefer's going to explain that in a second. Or make boot. I've seen the memory cards. You can buy them on Amazon, for crying out loud. Not that we're telling you to go do it or anything like that, but it's just, that's how readily available this stuff is, and it is really easy to work with. And yeah, so that's the focus. Is we're talking about this. And is it good? Is it bad? Does it sound exciting? How's this going to have an effect on the modding community? Do you think it's going to get shut down really quickly? We're going to bring the attention now to Kiefer.
Yeah, the thing is that it's really cool, actually, because it's basically tricking the console into thinking that a DVD is basically a normal DVD. Like a DVD that you burned with FREEDVDBOOT, it tricks it into thinking that it's just a normal playable DVD, like with a movie or something on it. Then when you click on it, it opens up the file system, and then you can download FreeMcBoot, which is cool. But the thing is that before this, you had to physically find one of these specific DVDs or PS2 games that had an exploit in it that you could that you had to find in order to mod the console in order to download FreeMcBoot. But now you don't have to do that. It's a lot simpler, which is kind of interesting. And yeah, those memory cards online with FreeMcBoot on them, a lot of them are the 64 megabyte ones, and I'm not sure if those are the ones that can fail easier, the off-brand ones.
So how do you think this is going to have an effect on the modding community compared to some of the other methods out there? Do you think this is going to kind of overtake some of the other methods that people have been using in the past? And is this going to become like the new norm? Or do you think this is because it's so easy, do you think it's going to really create a lot of attention coming from Sony?
I don't think Sony's going to be too harsh on this because, like, with their new PS5 and stuff, they aren't really adding too much backwards compatibility with too many consoles like the PS2, so they're not really making money on any new PS2 games or anything. So I'm assuming that they're probably not going to really go after them as much because there have already been exploits for so many years that they haven't really done much about. I assume they're just going to kind of let it slide and just ignore it and focus on the PS5. But I feel like for the modding community, this is a huge step because this is like what every modder dreams of, just having a simple way of getting into a system's file system or a console's file system, which is interesting. That's about all I have to say. What about you, Robert? What do you think?
Mecca looka high, mecca hiney ho. Woo! Yeah. Okay. James. Yeah.
Back to me. I agree with Kiefer on many of this, and please, it's weird that Sony's not doing backwards compatibility. It's probably because they're throwing out the source code. But I still think there's a chance that they might go after them because, I mean, it is, again, their intellectual property. And these major companies they've been hell-bent lately on really going after people for money. And just money, 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 money. And to them, that might be an investment, a profit source for them, and, to sue some of the people behind this. So if they could go after them just solely for the sake of making an extra buck. But and teaching them a lesson, because it all starts, this could be the gateway drug for the modders out there, and this could lead to something that gets a little bit too closer to home with the PlayStation 5 and things like this. So if you let them get away with one thing, who knows what that's going to branch off to. Lauren.
I agree with you completely, James. The look on your face. I think that with them, it comes down to, is how much does it cost in man hours to go after, these modders versus how much do they save in the end by doing it? I mean, I don't know how much of a leap it is to go from being able to do something like that with the PS2 to being able to do something like that with a PS5. I mean, I don't know enough about that community to even have a concept of that. But I think that that's really where the cost factor comes into play.
That's a good point. That is very much a good point, because if it isn't worthy to them to spend the kind of money to go after somebody, they might let it go. But they are going to create a grudge, I'm sure, that, or at least a grudge is going to form from that, and that's going to branch off to the very first moment they get a chance to justify it. They're going to come down hard on the world just to try to make a point. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, Nintendo's been doing a much better job at all of that. Nintendo is just, I mean, they're just like running around with a machete going, don't mess with the mouse, kind of, but only instead of a mouse, like Disney. You got Mario, don't mess with Mario. So they're kind of on the Disney level there. You don't mess with us. Our little characters would come down and break your kneecaps.
But I guess my question to that is, I mean, I know that at least since I got my PS4, I mean, Sony has had issues with hacking in general. So what, does this come down to? I mean, I'm not sure what, Microsoft has had to deal with, but I know that there have been several information hacks, over the last few years with Sony. I mean, is there just a security issue with their equipment in general or their company?
Could be.
Does this have anything to do with it at all? Sorry.
When it comes to information hacks like this, it could be. It could be that their actual network is not up to par to be able to safeguard this information, which can be worrisome when they're safeguarding customer information. When the PlayStation's payment system or just the network in general gets hacked and they're able to get user information, that's always bad. It could be that everything's secured behind the same network, who knows, or it could be third parties that they're going after to get some of this information from. And there's just so many different avenues that hackers can take to acquire this information. It's scary, and it's hard for these companies as well, because these companies are spending, tens of millions of dollars probably just on trying to prevent this alone, just trying to be proactive at it. I mean, the profit that these security companies are making off of companies to be able to just safeguard them from hackers is just insane, and that's the kind of pressure they're facing and the pain that they have to go through, so who's to say how much, how serious Sony has been about these proactive measures and how much money they put into this compared to other companies. Who's to say? I mean, maybe they're slacking and this is causing them to become responsible for the loss of information, or they're doing just as good and there just happens to be an intensely larger population of people that are going after them, trying to get their hands on some of this stuff. But for the most part, it looks like the biggest attention for the modding community is on the older consoles than anything else, because the newer stuff, it takes a long time to try to break that stuff down and reverse engineer it and try to figure out a way into the file system and how everything works and how to trick it and blah 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 blah. Not that we're going to teach anybody how to do it. I don't know how to do it, but that's exactly what they're doing, and that takes a long time, which is why you haven't seen any emulators for like the Wii even. I mean, you have seen Wii, there are Wii emulators out there, but they suck. They don't work. And same thing with PlayStation 2 even. There are some PlayStation 2 emulators that work just fine for the most part. They're okay. PlayStation 3, very buggy, and so forth, so they're not getting hit with some of their modern intellectual properties as hard as they are getting hit with their older stuff, because it's just sitting there. Especially in Nintendo's case, it literally is just sitting there and someone's just sucking it all up. Given that I don't it's hard to say if they actually got hit themselves. It sounds like it's a third party. Looks like the processor that they decided to use, that company's involved, has their hands on a lot of sensitive information too, so it sounds like it might have came through them. But we don't want to point fingers. That's not our job. That's Nintendo's job to figure out.
One thing I think is that I don't think it would be worth Sony's time to try and go after this person, because it seems, rather than like a company or effort like the Team Executor thing where they kind of arrested them, rather than that, it seems more like a single person just kind of used an exploit to find another exploit in their system, and then they're like, oh, here's a buffer overflow thing that I can get into the DVD drive, and then that's basically what they did. And then, from there they found the how to get into the file system from there, and it was just a simple way of getting in. I don't think it would be worth it to sue an individual person over like a giant company, so they may think it's less worth their time.
This is true. As long as they don't try to make any profit off of all of it. They try to start getting greedy, that's what's going to put a big target on their head. So that leads us to the end here then, and the big question of what do you think, the viewers? Feel free, again, as always, use the comment section down there below to give us your own thoughts. You know, what do you think about what's going on? From cartoons to the gaming industry and the modding and everything else. Share in the comments, and of course, subscribe. Subscribe to us because we need you. We need the attention. We need it because this is the day of the internet. That's how we judge ourselves and if people like us or not, is if, you know, you follow us and like us, because that's what a real friend is, right? So click that button, subscribe, comment below. Again, I'm James, this is Lauren, that's Robert, that's Kiefer. Awesome people. Once again, another wonderful episode, and we can't wait to see what comes next. If you have some suggestions, hit below in the comments and suggest some topics. Maybe we'll cover that in the next video. Until then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you then.